Captain Varady, you had prepared, the Lord had prepared you, for that loss, but you weren't prepared for some of the things that it stirred up that you thought were tucked away and that wouldn't resurface again. You had mentioned to me earlier about having some calls that came back vividly through this. Can you talk about the way you dealt with it and you stored things away thinking they were gone forever and how they came back?
Yeah. So in the beginning of my fire service career, just like I said, there's still some old timers out there that have that mentality of pack it away, put your emotions away. This is a job. This is what you're here to do. You're here to help people in their worst day. And so the several years prior to in the fire service, prior to losing Lucas, those calls would be packed away. Just like I said, those critical incident calls and that kind of stuff. There are resources, but the everyday calls that the care homes, the children drowning, the car accidents. I remember, I believe it was a 2-year-old kid that we had to life flight because of a seat broke and killed the kid. It was actually a huge deposition and lawsuit over that call, which, again, I just thought it was normal fire service, not thinking that any of this would be relevant until you lose and go through a traumatic experience yourself. And when I went through this traumatic experience and started going through grief counseling and seeing Grace and Guidance and Miss Snell, we started talking about the fire service and how, why I'm a fireman, why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I started talking, which I have no problem with talking. I love people can get me to shut up sometimes, but I started talking about this and I started talking about a call that I remember of a 12-year-old kid that shot himself in the head. And I spewed out the kid's name first and last, his birthday, his address. And this was several years after the call. And I didn't realize that I knew all that stuff. And that's just a huge red flag of, hey, look, I remembered this because it was such a traumatic experience, but I put it in the backpack. And until my backpack overflowed with this recent tragedy, I didn't know that I was carrying that. So dealing with that kind of stuff and looking back, okay, when I was carrying around all that stuff, how did I deal with that? Or how did I just not focus on that? I was drinking and going out and partying and being a young fireman and thinking I'm invincible and all that kind of stuff. And handling my emotional or mental status in a very unproductive and unhealthy way. Like I said, packing it away and substance and all that kind of stuff. Nothing illegal, but again, when you have enough drinks in you, it starts to back up on you. And then even when I found out about Lucas and stuff, I didn't handle it well. I was trying to do the grief counseling and all that kind of stuff, but I think that it's hard for me to relate to others going through tragedy. It's one of the things I was talking about with a friend the other day is I have a problem with empathy because I think this is something I'm learning throughout my grief and processing of this whole thing. But, in the beginning, you'd talk to me about your grandma dying and stuff like that. And I went to a grief share deal where I had a full-grown man crying to me that his 93-year-old grandma died. And I'm sitting here going, my kid died. Like 93 years old, that's a great life. Like we should celebrate that person. But me being reckless and not learning, and what I've learned now is everybody processes different instances and grief and situations differently. So the empathy is what I'm working on and trying to, what's important to me is not important to you, and what affects you doesn't affect me. And how we relate that to the fire service is I think the fire service has been so cut and dry on this is how we're going to deal with this, this, and this. And with young guys, young firemen these days, it's not a cut and dry process. You need to take the box and throw it away. You don't even have to think outside the box. You just need to throw that entire box away and create a new one, create a new process on how to deal with mental illness and stability within the fire service. So I believe in the fire service. We're not here to create firemen anymore. Your academy is to create the firemen. Being 40 years old now, 20 years in the fire service, seeing the change in society. We're not here to just create firemen. We're here to create young men, young women, boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, parents, children to elderly parents and stuff. We have a duty now to create a good human being or a better human being. There's some stories that I have of back that when I had a rookie, you know, so I'm in a grocery store. I grew up in a grocery store. I'm privileged on a lot of things, but send a rookie to the grocery store. Their parents don't teach them about the grocery store, don't teach them about cuts of meat. So, you know, I send a rookie there and he spends $100 on 3 things. And you're like, what did you do? And he admitted to me, he goes, parents went to the grocery store. No one teaches me this stuff. And I go, you know how to iron? No. You know how to change a tire? He knew how that one was, but we're responsible in the fire service now for creating better human beings, not just better firemen.